I want to bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes, who's at the Washington Hilton, where the second prayer breakfast President Trump attended is taking place. And Nancy joins us now. Nancy, no word yet, I guess, if the president intends to replace 2 Corinthians with his favorite Bible passage, 2 Corinthians. But tell me what's going on there today at the president's prayer breakfast.
Well, the president talked a lot about religious freedom and religious liberty, Vlad. He said that he wants to be the president to bring religious liberty back and bring it back very strongly. He outlined some steps that he wants to take to do that. For example, he said in his speech here at the Washington Hilton that he is going to create a new presidential commission on religious liberty. He said it's going to be a very big deal. He said he's going to be signing an executive order later today directing his new Attorney General Pam Bondi to create a task force to immediately eradicate all forms of anti-Christian bias in the U.S. And then finally, he said he's going to be creating an Office of White House Faith, White House Faith Office, rather. He insisted that religious freedom has been under attack, under assault over the last few years. He argued that the Biden administration was against religious freedom, and he didn't give many examples of that. He did point to a woman who was here at this prayer breakfast this morning who had been sentenced to 2 years in prison after she protested outside of a D.C. abortion clinic. The president pardoned her recently. He said that she was simply exercising her First Amendment rights, her religious liberty. Prosecutors said that she and her fellow protesters were physically blocking patients from getting into the office. Nevertheless, here before this gathering for the prayer breakfast, President Trump said he wants to put religious freedom front and center in his administration.
Okay, we'll see what happens there, Nancy. Let me ask you about this federal judge who's blocked the president's executive order that aims at ending birthright citizenship. This was a major campaign promise of the president. What is the White House now saying about it?
Well, they are likely to appeal this second decision by a federal judge to at least temporarily block the president's new executive order. She said that it would be unconstitutional to fulfill this executive order, that no court in 125 years has ever agreed with the analysis of the Trump administration about birthright citizenship. What Trump wants to do is basically prevent anyone who is born to someone who is here in the country illegally or here in the country legally but temporarily from being able to claim birthright citizenship. For now, though, that's on ice. That is blocked as this case winds through the courts and potentially heads eventually to the Supreme Court, Vlad.
All right. And finally, Nancy, in a post on his Truth Social account this morning, the president says Gaza would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. So this is not an off-the-cuff remark the president has made. This is something that he is signaling, which will be a major policy stance of the United States government. So what is the White House's plan for Gaza at this moment?
I would say it's still quite confusing, Vlad. What the president said in that post last night was that that somehow the Israelis would hand Gaza over to the United States after the fighting has ended and after Israel has somehow managed to relocate the 2 million people who live in Gaza right now, put them somewhere else in beautiful housing, as the president put it. And so it would basically be handed over to the United States empty, and that is why, he argues, the U.S. would not need to commit any U.S. troops to the operation because there would be no one there to fight the U.S. occupation. He has also insisted this wouldn't cost the U.S. any money, even as as he says that the U.S. would be developing it into a world-class destination, and he has also said that we would own it in perpetuity. How that would cost no money, require no U.S. troops, remains to be seen. We have asked the White House about this. They have sometimes given different explanations than the president himself has. They have said it's only going to be temporary, that people would eventually be allowed to come back. And as we know, Vlad, the reaction from overseas, from Middle Eastern countries, has been that all of this would be against international law to displace millions of Palestinians.
And Nancy, really quickly, I know you and the White House press corps are very familiar with Trumpese, but I get that sometimes the president will inject some humor in the things that he's saying. But what is the reference to Chuck Schumer, who happens to be a Jewish American, with reference to Gazans being resettled? I'm failing to understand the connection.
You're talking about in his Truth Social post last night?
Yeah.
Well, it's true that Chuck Schumer is Jewish. However, Schumer is also against this idea that somehow the Israelis have full rights to the Gaza Strip, and they simply have the power to hand it over to the United States. However, Vlad, I can tell you that at the White House, and conservatives in this country and conservative leaders in Israel have long believed that the Israelis should lay claim to more territory, either in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. And so what the president is saying, even though it's a bit confusing, off the cuff, even though it seems a little bit half-baked, it does reflect what some conservatives in this country and what some right-wing leaders in Israel have been saying for quite some time. And that's why it's being received very positively from these right-wing leaders in Israel, even as you hear condemnation from other nations in the Middle East.
Important context there, as always, from Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.